Welcome back to the Working Mama podcast. Or if you're new here, a very big welcome. This podcast is all about supporting women through the realities of combining career, motherhood, and everything in between. Whether you're on maternity leave, preparing to return to work, deep in the daycare juggle, or simply trying to hold it all together, you're in the right spot. Today's episode was sparked by something that lit up the internet. That viral ABC lifestyle Instagram carousel that basically said, working mums, the math ain't mathing, which they've actually changed. And that's the new title. The first title was Mums, How Do You Manage the Juggle? It broke down what every parent already knew absolutely in their bones. That school hours are roughly 9 till 3. The standard workday pushes out to around 5:30. And then compared the reality of school holidays with the reality of annual leave. But you know what? The slide that hit a nerve was the final one, where the ABC said, "So how are mothers juggling it all? What are your tips for getting it all done?" And the comment section didn't respond with life hacks. They were full of women really saying, "We can't, we're not juggling, and we're just surviving." A lot of people also called out the language of why working mums, while dads just should get to be working. And people basically said, stop asking us to cope and instead start asking what needs to change. So that's exactly what I want to chat with you about today. This episode is not about giving you a better planner. It's not about time management. It's not about you trying harder. It's about naming the bigger truth. The problem, as we know, isn't working mums. Instead, the problem is about what people expect of us. Now, let's start with the word juggle, because it really sounds harmless, right? Like women juggle so much. Working mums are juggling all the balls. But the juggle is sneaky because it frames an impossible system that we live in as a personal performance. Like if you just get better at juggling, become more efficient, more organized, more calm, more together, then everything will be okay and you'll just be fine. But the ABC post backlash proved something important. Women are done with being told how to juggle if it's a skill issue, when it's actually a structural issue. We're living in systems that are over 100 years old. The 40-hour work week actually got invented by Henry T. Ford over 100 years ago to try and get better work-life balance. But it was also in the day and age when there was typically a parent working, typically the father, and then another parent at home, typically the mother. And that's the structures we've lived in, and we still continue to live in it. But about 73% of all families these days have two working parents. It's really shifted over the last couple of generations. So today we're flipping the question. Not how do working mums juggle it all, but why are working mums still expected to carry it all? So you know what? This isn't in your head. The bias is real. If you've ever felt like you have to prove yourself at work since becoming a mum, you're not imagining it. There's a reason why so many mums feel like they have to over-explain, over-deliver, and apologize for existing after they have returned to work after parental leave. For example, a 2025 survey reported that 73% of working mums felt like they're perceived as less committed or ambitious because they're mums. And also, the same report found that 50% of employees believed that working mums are held to higher standards than fathers. That is absolutely crazy. Because just because we've had a child doesn't mean we're any less ambitious or any, less committed. Actually, probably at times we're more committed because we want the stable job. So these stats are absolutely mind-blowing. But you know what? It actually doesn't surprise me. So these particular numbers also come from US-based surveys. So we can also treat them as just, from the US. But they match a much broader research that we have known about for years, that motherhood changes how people judge competence, commitment, and promotability. Also, a study by Harvard looked at hiring discrimination and found mothers were judged as less competent and less committed than non-mothers. They were less likely to be recommended for hire, whilst also fathers were not penalised in the same way. So if you feel like you're working twice as hard for half the assumptions of competence, you're not too sensitive. You're bumping into bias, sometimes loud, sometimes subtle, but certainly no less real. And you know what? The real maths of paid work plus unpaid work, 1 + 1 does not equal 2 here. Let's bring this home to Australia, because this is where the maths ain't mathing, because actual data, the ABS, so the Australian Bureau of Statistics, time use survey shows that on average, women spend 4 hours and 31 minutes a day doing unpaid work, whilst men spend 3 hours and 12 minutes. And specifically for parents, mothers spent 3 hours and 34 minutes a day in childcare activities, whilst fathers spent 2 hours and 19 minutes. As you can see, this isn't a personal choice problem. This is a load distribution problem. And when you zoom out, you can see why working mums, and we all do, feel like we're always behind. We're often doing unpaid work, then we go do our paid work, and then we come home for really what is the third shift. Because let's just be honest, getting kids out the door is definitely one of the hardest shifts of the day. You might feel like your brain never stops. Now let's layer in what the ABS numbers can't fully capture, and that's the mental load. It's not the doing, all the activities. It's not another list. It's the holding, the remembering, the anticipating, the organizing, the background operating system running in your head. School notes, kindy reminders, childcare forms, immunization, who needs new shoes, what size even should they be, who needs a costume, who's got an excursion coming up, what's for dinner tonight, what's in the fridge, what time's swimming, which parent's on pickup, which day is the special lunch, and if someone is sick, what is the contingency plan? I have to say, last week, I thought that I was doing really well for school holidays, but instead I rocked up to my eldest son's school holiday program. His name wasn't on the iPad for entering to say he was there. Instead, I had to very kindly and quickly ask the educator and say, do they have an extra spot? Yes, I forgot to book him in when I thought I had. I'd booked him in for 2 days in the second week, not even a day in the first week. So I look like a real nuff. But I'm just carrying a lot. You forget things. Yes, there are glass balls and there are plastic balls. There are balls that we're juggling, as I say. But it's not really that I'm juggling. I'm just holding on to so much. And it can be exhausting. It is exhausting. That's why when we use the word juggle, it can really be seen as sometimes an insulting word, because it makes it sound like you're doing an absolute circus act. And it probably actually feels like it, that you sometimes, I know that I do, probably feel like I'm the clown at the start and the end of the show, and there's all these exciting acts happening in between. But instead, we're actually not juggling as mums. Instead, we're running multiple systems simultaneously. The famous, we've got 1,000 tabs open in our brain, and it's really hard to shut any down, and often with very little margin for error. And because it's invisible, you can end up being told you're overwhelmed, or if it's a personality flaw instead of a workload reality. At work, we've got task lists. It's easy to show what we're doing. At home, unfortunately, it's all in our head. It's invisible. It's hard to. And as soon as you start writing it down, it doesn't stop. Now, the motherhood penalty and the earnings that we get when we become a mum really take a hit. So let's talk money, because this is where the cost becomes undeniable. An Australian paper on the impact of children on the gender earnings gap found that after children arrive, female annual earnings drop by, get this, 53% on average in the first 5 years of parenthood. Yes, you heard that right. That is massive. That is huge. And it's not because mothers suddenly become less capable. This paper attributes the earnings gap primarily to lower participation and reduced hours, including shifts to part-time work. It also looks at the access to workplace flexibility increases the likelihood women retained and being employed after having children. So when we talk about supporting working mums, we're not talking about flexible work as a nice to have. We're talking about economic security, career stability, superannuation, and long-term financial independence for both women and also families, because we do know that women over the age of 55 are the fastest growing rate of homelessness here in Australia. And also, they retire with so much less super than their husbands and certainly as well male counterparts. And flexible work is so important, as you see, to actually retaining women in the workplace. If there was one good thing that probably came out of COVID, even in just a conversation, it's definitely around flexible, and I would also say hybrid work. But you know what? This isn't just a mum problem. It's a care system problem. We can't keep calling this mum guilt as if it's a mindset issue, because women are doing a lot of the unpaid work, and mothers are spending more time doing childcare than fathers. But the problem is that our systems, the workplace systems, the household systems, the care systems, were not designed for the reality that most families now live. Which brings us to the most important part of this episode. What actually needs to change, and how can we start creating it? So here's where we get practical, because naming the problem is validating, but change is built through specific actions. So I've thought about this, and I'm going to break it into 4 different levels, which I think is actually a lot more digestible. The first is about you, your language, the boundaries, and also visibility. Number 2, it's about the home, because I'm a big believer that gender equality actually starts in the home and doesn't actually start in the workplace. And it's also at home, definitely around redistributing the mental load. Number 3, so the third layer, is the workplace with the systems, the policy, and the culture. And then the 4th part is then society with schools, childcare, the media, and then also the public and societal pressures, but also the policy pressures that come with it. And I want to say this clearly before we begin. This is something that it's not like another 20 things that working mums or mums must do. Instead, it's a bit of a roadmap where you can pick one lever at a time. And so we can stop pretending this is all about a personal failing. It's the most important thing I want you to hear is we don't change this by asking mums to cope harder. We change this by shifting what's normal everywhere, and that's perceptions as well around the traditional roles of male and female. It's called parenting. Okay, so level 1, what you can do without making it another burden. So number 1, stop calling it mum guilt when it's a system guilt, because mum guilt implies that you're doing something wrong. You're not. But what you're actually feeling is the friction of trying to live inside an outdated system that's over 100 years old and definitely has moved on in that way. We're not driving Henry T, like we're not driving those old Fords around anymore. Instead, we're looking at EVs, aren't we? So when you name it as a systematic issue, something powerful happens. You stop trying to self-improve your way out of structural pressures. Instead, you can name it and go, it's the system. And I'm trying to be a bit like a square peg in the round hole. So from here, number 2, you can change the scripts that you use out loud. And one of the most radical things that you can do is stop apologizing for what is normal caregiving realities. So instead of, sorry, I have to duck off for pickup, you could always try, I'm heading off now, I'll pick this up tomorrow, or I'll look at it later. This is going to be the same outcome of actually picking up a child, but the language you use around it can be so powerful, and also set some boundaries as well with some colleagues. Because this is where bias thrives, is when mums act like their care is like a confession. Oh, I'm just doing this. No, own it. Don't be ashamed of it. I actually named it in an out of office last week. So I had time off for school holidays. And so I named it. I said, I'm out of the office being a mum, and you'll probably see me kicking a footy and having fun. And that's what I named. Like, why do I have to stand behind that I'm on holidays? Because I wasn't. I was playing, being mum and having time with my two boys. I owned it. So I encourage you to as well. Even if it is something simple as, in the bottom of your email footer, an out of office reply. Don't be afraid of it. Now, number 3 in this section as well is make your mental load visible in ways that protects you. You can name what you're holding, document what you do, make the invisible visible in your household and workplace. Have the conversation with your partner, with your husband, and then also maybe even with your manager, just so they can understand where you're coming from. Don't try, and what's the famous saying? Don't try and work like you don't have kids and have kids like you don't work. That's just going to be exhausting and no doubt lead to burnout, because invisible labor doesn't get redistributed. Instead, the labor that's named, that's communicated, will get distributed. And don't be afraid to actually ask for help and get someone else to do something. As annoying and as difficult it might be to actually go, oh my God, I could do this in half the time, I encourage you, just try and just give at least one task away. Now, level 2, what needs to change at home? If there's one expectation that's become real here, is that the ABS data shows that women still do more unpaid work and mothers still do more childcare time than fathers. So the home is not separate from the workplace problem. Instead, it fuels it. So here, replace helping with ownership. Language shapes behavior. If you say, can you help with the kids? It frames parenting as yours and your partner as the assistant. So instead, you could say, who owns the daycare forms? Who owns the lunches? Could even be who owns the lunches on what days? Who owns the sick care plan? Who owns the after school activities? Ownership means remembering, planning, and anticipating. They take ownership for those tasks, not just about when they're asked to do it, but also holding them to account. Now here, next one, do a mental load audit. Make it simple, non-judgy. You can literally just write down and list everything that gets done in someone's head. It can be the appointments, the school admin, the gifts, the party planning, the uniforms, the food planning, what's happening for the week, the grocery shopping, the family calendar, the social calendar. Oh my goodness, I'm exhausted. And that's probably only just a tip of the iceberg. And you know what? Then split it by ownership, not how can I help? It should be, this is your responsibility, this is my responsibility, or even outsource it. And what we also now need to do as well in the home is support dads or partners to take leave and also encourage them with flexibility, because this reduces stigma. A huge lever for shifting expectations is men taking parental leave and flexible work. The Workplace Gender Equality Agency, so WGEA, reports that in Australia, only 17% of employer-funded primary care leave is taken by men. And WGEA also points out that parental leave, flexible work are used, and by whom is a key indicator of whether care is being shared more equally. So this is not nice. It's cultural engineering. And what we can see with 17%, that is not equal. That is not anywhere even near equal. So it really just shows that things have got still a very long way to go, definitely in the home. And we know that when dads take leave and flexible work visibly, the bias against mums decrease because care stops being a woman's issue. Last week's episode, so episode 186 with Michael Ray, was all about a dad's perspective. And he shared, oh my goodness, so many gems of gold. I then also shared about this on LinkedIn and also on Instagram. But on LinkedIn, I had some dads then replying to the post of saying the best thing they did was actually take a parental leave and how valuable it has been with their children. And for me, it's just like so reaffirming of like, yes, this is great. We just need to support more dads. So now level 3, what workplaces really should and could be doing. And this is really where a lot of the real leverage lives. So let's get blunt. Many workplaces still operate around ideal worker assumptions that uninterrupted availability, linear careers, and face time are the most important factors. But as we know, that's not really reality, and that doesn't work well for working mums, particularly when we want flexibility. But also, as I just said, dads to enable them to have flexibility as well. Unfortunately, Australia's data and evidence increasingly shows that care patterns are deeply tied to gender inequality outcomes. WGEA states that the parenthood affects women's career progression and pay more than men's, which contributes to the gender pay gap and links directly to the distribution of parental leave and flexible work. And that's also where then you hear the fatherhood bonus and then the motherhood penalty. And WGEA also notes that women's superannuation balance is 25% lower than men's in this lead up to retirement. And this is in the context of care impacting compounding over time. So what changes? What do we need to do? We need to make flexibility the default, not a favor, not can I get this. It needs to be default. If flexibility is a special deal, then the person using it becomes the exception, and exceptions always get judged. Flexible work needs to be the standard way of working, not only a mum-only workaround. Even I know with people without kids, they need to sometimes do caring arrangement. They've got other appointments and things like that. There is flexibility in hybrid work that works for everyone. And it's not just about FaceTime getting people back into the office. So check out my episodes with Dr. Ellen Ford on this topic. Her and I have a great chat, but there's so much that we can do around this. And also here, organizations could be looking at instead measuring output, not presence. If performance is based on visibility, who stays late, who's online, caregivers lose by design. Instead, outcome-based performance is one of the cleanest ways to remove availability bias. Who says that someone working 5 days because they're there, visibility and visible hours, 40 hours a week, is going to be more productive than someone than, say, maybe doing 34 hours? There's nothing. It's also about the outcomes that they're having. Then also redesigning progression so careers aren't punished for caregiving phases. The Australian research shows motherhood impacts earnings through reduced participation and also hours, which is exactly where workplaces punish people through stalled progression. We know a major driver of the earnings gap after children is participation and hours. So workplaces must stop designing senior progression like the only way up is full-time and always on. So workplaces need here part-time leadership pathways, job sharing, and even the openness to job sharing concepts at senior levels, and promotion criteria that doesn't treat part-time or even treat time as the proximity for value. There are so many women that, in the working mama community and different circles actually say, I would love a senior part-time role. And they are few and far between. There should be more, but we just need to actually have the confidence from organizations to actually structure them that way. Give permission. Take a leap of faith on someone and actually allow them to do it. We also then need to train leaders as well on the motherhood bias and make it behavioral, not theoretical. Because as we know, research suggests motherhood triggers assumptions about competence and commitment, as I spoke about earlier. So managers need training that teaches them to spot that the potential being judged, not just through availability. Mothers being overlooked for stretch work because she'll be busy, and flexibility being interpreted as lack of ambition. We need to actively normalise men taking parental leave and flexibility. WGEA is explicit. Promoting men's uptake of parental leave and flexibility is critical to closing gender pay gaps. It's critical to closing gender gaps because parenthood affects women's progression and pay more than men's. As I mentioned earlier, the motherhood penalty and then the gender and then the fatherhood bonus. If men don't take flexibility, mums keep paying for it. This means leaders role modeling it, HR and managers encouraging it, and men not being treated and men not being punished culturally for taking it. We also need to treat caring as normal workforce reality. And it's not a woman's issue because as the ABC post went viral precisely as it showed, it was a mismatch. Then put the burden back onto mothers on how to solve it. Workplaces can either keep asking individuals could cope or they can evolve the systems to match reality. And we certainly know as well that there's the sandwich generation where more people, as they get a little bit older, are actually going to be caring for older parents. So it's not just fathers, mothers that are going to be doing, younger children caring. It's also, they'll be doing the caring for potentially their parents and their loved ones. Now, level 4, society, where we've got the schools, the childcare, the media, and also then the policies that support this. This is the part where we stop pretending it's a household issue alone. The ABC post went viral because it highlighted an everyday structural mismatch and then asked mums to solve it. So what do we push for? We need to treat childcare as infrastructure and not a private problem. When childcare is unstable, unaffordable, or inaccessible, women's workforce participation drops first. The Australian evidence ties the earnings gap after children to reduced participation and hours for mothers. So childcare is not a lifestyle choice. It's an economic infrastructure. It also allows women to work because generally, as I said, they will be the ones that will typically often take the back seat or say, no, it's all right, I'll have time off and I'll look after my child. And I'm not saying just childcare, I'm also saying the care arrangements because I know there are so many different options for children to experience care before they go to school. Now, this one as well often triggers a lot of people that schools and childcare centres or any care arrangements must contact both parents by default. Often there's only one person who's the contact, but why not have both parents on there? Default parenting isn't just created at home. The default parent is often reinforced by systems that contact mum first, email first, and expect mum to remember it all. And we need to change that by insisting both parents are listed. Both parents can be contacted and both parents are treated as responsible. Changing this changes the load. I know one time I was actually contacted. I think overseas and I was like, I'm overseas, call my husband. And I think I'd already let them know that I was traveling and I wasn't going to be the primary contact. It's just mind-boggling all the time, but everyone always says it. And even Michael Ray said it last week on episode 18. The media needs to stop selling the super mum notion and also start demanding the systems. The ABC comments backlash showed that people are tired of the troop of mums juggling their way to burnout. Where's the dad's juggle in all of this? Women are being sold to do it all as empowerment when it's actually abandonment. We don't need more content about coping. We need content and stories around what workplaces must change, what partners must share, and what policies enable families to function. We need to be sharing these stories, normalizing dads taking parental leave, normalizing dads having flexible work. These are not just mum experiences. We need to get dads to step up because also in workplaces, you can't be what you can't see. So if we've got more dads that are leaving loudly, say, I've got to pick up my child from childcare because it shuts at 6 o'clock. That means I might need to leave at 4:30 to get home. They need to call it out. They need to do it. And we need more of that. And we also need national data to keep the pressure on. The ABS shows the unpaid work imbalance. WGEA is publishing and pushing workplace gender equality reporting and resources and explicitly links care patterns to gender equality outcomes. Data makes it harder for society to gaslight women into thinking it's just personal. Just keep juggling. So if you're listening and thinking, this is big, but what do I do about this on Monday morning and where do I start? Well, here's a simple approach. Pick one action from 2 of the levels this week. It could be picking one from home, reassigning ownership to one invisible job, picking one from the workplace. Ask for one outcome-based agreement, like what does success look like versus how present do I need to be? And if you only do one thing, please do this. Stop apologizing for normal care responsibilities because you are not doing something wrong. And remember, the ABS data already shows unpaid work is not evenly distributed. This is not about you being bad at juggling. This is you living in a system that still expects mums to carry more. Tiny shifts repeated become culture. That's how we challenge the norms and create the change we want. So the problem isn't that working mums can't handle it. We can. That's what we've been expected to handle just too much for too long with such little support. And you know what? That ABC post really went viral because it accidentally exposed the truth. They are right. The maths doesn't work. And the mums are sick of being asked to solve it alone. We want the dads to step up. We want the partners to step up. If you take nothing else from today, take this. You are not the problem. The expectations are. If this episode hit home, I would really appreciate if you could share this with another mum who needs to hear it. And if you want, message me about one expectation you've done carrying alone or any other ideas that you might have. Because the more visible this becomes, faster it changes. And I'd love to work with you on helping create that change. So until next time, please know you're doing a great job, Mama. You're here, you're not alone, and have a great day. You've got this.